Welcome to this explainer. If you're gearing up for high-stakes interviews or, heavy-duty certification exams in construction and safety management, you are in exactly the right spot. Today, we're taking a goldmine of top-tier industry interview strategies and boiling them down into a focused masterclass review guide. Okay, let's dive into this and get you those foundational tools you need to really stand out as a competent, impactful leader. So here's our game plan. We're going to cover 5 core concepts pulled right from expert insights. 1. Mastering the managerial mindset. 2. The risk assessment process. 3. Building a baseline budget. 4. Managing ambiguity and conflict. And finally, 5. Cultivating a safety culture. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Mastering the Managerial Mindset. Possessing incredible technical knowledge means absolutely nothing if you don't have the right foundational mindset to back it up. A top-tier manager isn't just technically astute, they've got to be commercially driven. You have to balance that intense, laser focus on safety with real commercial awareness and the organization's strategic goals. Plus, you need outstanding leadership and formidable time management, because let's face it, deadlines simply cannot be missed in this industry. Add in being an exceptional communicator and negotiator, a keen attention to detail, and a real hunger for self-development, well, you've got the exact blueprint of a standout candidate. Moving right along to Section 2. The risk assessment process. Whether you're a construction site manager or a dedicated safety officer, understanding exactly how to assess risk is literally the bedrock of your entire job. I want you to ask yourself right now, how do we methodically define and execute a risk assessment? If an interview panel throws this at you, you can't just rattle off a list of random hazards. No way. You need a structured, undeniable approach. So, by definition, a risk assessment is a systematic process of identifying workplace hazards, evaluating the risks associated with them, and implementing precautions to minimize harm to an acceptable level. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that key phrase right at the very end, minimize harm to an acceptable level. You aren't just blindly chasing this impossible zero-risk scenario in a heavy industry. That's not realistic. Instead, you're methodically managing and mitigating the real-world realities of the job site to maintain compliance and, most importantly, protect your people. To actually do that, you need to lock this exact 5-step sequence into your memory for those exams and high-stakes interviews. Ready? Step 1. Identify the hazards present, like a heavy piece of machinery or a toxic chemical. Step 2. Determine who is at risk from harm and exactly how. Step 3. Evaluate those risks and decide on the necessary precautions. Step 4, record your findings and implement them, which, by the way, includes informing and training everyone involved. And finally, Step 5, regularly review and amend the assessment as the project inevitably evolves. Commit that to memory, for sure. All right, on to Section 3, building a baseline budget. Budgeting is the exact area where a lot of otherwise technically gifted managers drop the ball if they lack a systematic approach. So let's define it clearly. A baseline budget is the foundational cost estimate built from historical data and expert consultation, which requires regular, real-time updating as a construction project progresses. The crucial takeaway here, a baseline budget is a living document. It is not a static, set-in-stone number. You build it by looking at past projects to save time and by tapping into your network of experts so you aren't wasting hours reinventing the wheel. Now, when you're actually structuring that budget, you absolutely must separate your fixed costs from your transient costs. Fixed costs are your predictable set expenses. Think software licenses, office space, things like that. Transient costs, on the other hand, are variable and totally fluctuating, like labor hours, travel, and the wild, ever-changing prices of raw materials. Honestly, distinguishing between these two types of costs is the most time-consuming part of the whole process, but it is absolutely vital for nailing an accurate baseline. So the crucial point is that you need a really comprehensive mental checklist when you sit down to build a robust project budget. Mentally flag these specific expenses: labor and consultation fees, raw materials and suppliers, travel and accommodation, software tool licenses, and, of course, administrative fees and insurance. Missing literally just one of these categories can completely derail an entire project's financial foundation. Let's shift gears to Section 4, Managing Ambiguity and Conflict. We're pivoting away from the numbers now to look at the human element of project management, because on any dynamic site, ambiguity and conflict aren't just mere possibilities, they are absolute guarantees. So how do we actually define ambiguity in a professional setting? It's a project state caused by the absence of key information, management indecision, misinterpretation of requirements, or conflict between team members over responsibilities. It's not just a general vibe of confusion, right? It's a measurable breakdown in the project pipeline that requires you, the manager, to step in and fix it. And here is the methodical approach to resolving that ambiguity. Step 1, determine the exact cause. Are we looking at indecision or just missing info? Step 2, revisit the initial project brief to get some clarity. Step 3, assess your team members' actual strengths and areas of expertise. And step 4, delegate explicit responsibility to the absolute most suited person. Following this exact sequence is basically how you transform operational chaos right back into smooth working order. But what happens when things escalate beyond just ambiguity? Like, what happens when serious conflict arises? Say, an employee actively refusing to follow essential safety protocols. This is a super high-stakes situational question. It's an absolute favorite of exam boards and interview panels because it really tests your conflict resolution skills under pressure. As a leader, going straight for a heavy-handed disciplinary approach should never, ever be your first step. Instead, follow this escalation path. First, immediately speak to the individual in private. Don't jump to conclusions. Ask questions to figure out exactly why they're resisting. Second, educate and influence them by laying out the severe consequences. And I don't just mean the very real risk of injury or death, but also the massive financial impact of fines on the company. Only after you've tried to educate and influence should you move to step 3, which is instigating disciplinary procedures as a final, absolute last resort. Which brings us to our final topic, Section 5, cultivating a safety culture. You see, true management, especially in construction and occupational health, isn't just about policing people and barking rules. It's about creating an environment of intrinsic compliance where people actually want to be safe. Safety must always come first. It sounds so simple, right? And this brilliantly illustrates how a simple mantra must be embedded deep, deep into the organizational mindset. But just saying it isn't enough. You've got to operationalize it. So here are some expert-backed strategies for effective safety education. First, you have to get your company managers and department heads on board first. This is the secret sauce. If leadership champions safety, it trickles down to the rest of the workforce. Next, keep those training sessions short, concise, and highly relevant. Nobody wants their time wasted. Move away from dry textbooks and focus on real-world case studies where safety went wrong to highlight the true human impact. And finally, keep them engaged using interactive group discussions and quizzes. If you remember only one summary point from this entire review guide, let it be this. Safety is a shared responsibility that runs in parallel with an organization's strategic objectives. The most successful, game-changing managers are the ones who can flawlessly marry strict legal safety compliance with the company's commercial success. They aren't opposing forces at all. They work hand in hand. So, as we wrap up this masterclass, I want to leave you with this thought. Knowing these foundational concepts, from mastering risk assessments to systematically budgeting and navigating conflicts, how will you adapt your own leadership style to protect both your people and your projects? Take these flashcard concepts, apply them to your real-world career, and go ace that exam or interview. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.